for joining this debate with Mr. Ahmed Masoud, the founder and the president of the National Resistance Front. Thank you for taking time to talk to us at Atlantic Council. It's exactly 1 year since we last spoke. We were in Kabul and Panjshir. It's going to be a 1 year anniversary since the fall of Kabul. And the first question I'd like to ask you, aside of welcoming and taking time out from your very busy schedule, given all the events in Afghanistan, what is the current position on the ground and the unique perspective that you have, given what the resistance and the movement has achieved in the last year?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I also like to say hello to everyone who's watching. It has been exactly almost 1 year since last time we spoke. At that time, we were in Kabul, and we could feel the steps of doom coming to the Kabul and unfortunately to the people of Afghanistan. We tried everything to prevent that by interacting with the regional countries, with our neighbors, and also trying to express our deepest concerns to Americans, to Europeans, and to the world about the situation in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, all of those efforts that we have put years or months before the fall of Kabul, it was all futile and it did not work out. And unfortunately, the Kabul, due to various reasons, it fell. After that, we and me with my friends, we retreated to the Panjshir Valley, where it was the only area still free, and it was still free of the occupation and free of the Taliban regime. So there, we and my friends, we tried to make reason with the Taliban, and we tried to talk to the Taliban, and we tried to continue the peaceful effort that the Afghan people were very hopeful to achieve. Few things that we tried to do at the beginning was to make the Taliban understand that the legitimacy in Afghanistan, it cannot come through the barrel of gun. It needs to come through people and through a legitimate process. And that is something that we need to invest and work together. That the Taliban cannot seek legitimacy from outside world. It doesn't work that way. You need to actually gain the trust of people, and that requires a legitimate process. And we emphasized on the importance of a peaceful transition, a peaceful government, and also a peace talk between us, between the other sides and groups and the Taliban, for a procedure to create a legitimate government. Unfortunately, despite our various efforts for finding a peaceful solution and also warning the Taliban that conquering a country or capturing the cities and capturing a country is easy, but controlling and containing it, it is the most difficult part. And you will have a lot of problems, and Afghans will face a lot of problems. And I do not want my country to once again see from famine to war to many other problems. So at this stage, let's end the circle of doom and let's create a new path and let's create a new era. Unfortunately, the message of Taliban to us, it was very clear that we expect nothing less than surrender and imprisonment and basically for us to surrender in the joint Taliban. And even for them, they went too far and to offer me a job in their government. And once again, I tried to make them understand that just me joining sort of their regime, it will not bring legitimacy. The legitimacy will only happen if we get it from the people of Afghanistan. And so far, the people are not happy, and this is not the way it works. Unfortunately, they brought war to my people and to us, and they have murdered and they killed a lot of innocent people, a lot of civilian, and a lot of Afghan people. And we had no choice but to defend ourselves and to create the National Resistance Front. And it was based on the determination of people and the reaction of people for defending their rights, defending their values, defending their women, their wives, their mothers, their sisters, their children, and themselves. And based on that reaction, the National Resistance Front was created. However, since the Afghan Kabul in the very last minute, as you remembered when I was in Kabul, I supported the Afghan government and I supported the legitimate government. And I was always against creating a militia group or creating any sort of outside the structure of a legitimate government entity. However, after the fall of the government, it took us a while to regroup, to re-energize, to once again to recreate a structure to be able to withstand the brutal force of the Taliban and to flourish, to spread, and to bring hope to more areas in Afghanistan. As we speak right now, the resistance managed to withstand all of those attacks, and it managed to stand against all of the brutal attacks that they did. And also we managed to survive the harsh winters that are resistant fighters, they are fighting, and the freedom fighters, they're fighting for the values, and they're continuing to this. And also, all the points that we made, that the Taliban, despite many people claiming that they have changed, that this is the Taliban 2.0, that we must engage with them somehow, we proved them that they have not changed, they're still harboring the terrorism, their brutal behavior have not changed, they don't believe in women's rights, they don't believe in other ethnicities' right. So there is no other option but to resist until they understand and realize they need to also submit, as all of us, to a legitimate process which brings a legitimate government which is accountable to the people of Afghanistan and also to the world.
Absolutely. And I remember, last year when you were talking, negotiating with them, and since both before the fall of Kabul, after the fall of Kabul, because Panjshir was the only place that was resisting when your forces retreated there. And I guess 1 year after the fall, there haven't been much changes. I know there have been some regional efforts from Iran, Uzbekistan, Pakistan in terms of bringing regional parties to the table for legitimacy, which is lacking at the moment. You talked about terrorism, of course. You saw recently there was the drone strike against the leader of Al-Qaeda, which goes against the fundamentals of the Doha Accords of giving sanctuary to global terrorists, and they're living in the hearts of Kabul. How do you view the terrorism fight now in Afghanistan, with clearly the Taliban so far have failed to commit to what they promised, whether from international terrorism, of course, if the most wanted man in the world is living in the middle of Kabul, that means Taliban, of course, are hosting him, and allegedly he was in the house of the interior minister himself. And both domestic terrorism, there have been human rights violations all over the country. Women are completely being shut out. Innocent people have been killed in many northern provinces, Panjshir, Takhar, Andrab, but also in the south and the east. How do you see both the international terrorism fights, the domestic terrorism, unfortunately being launched by the Taliban? Where does the resistance front put itself now, given there is a resistance in the north, there is a foothold? How do you view international and domestic legitimacy and cooperation?
Regarding this question, I need to elaborate on a few things. First and foremost, once again, I need to emphasize the fact that unfortunately we tried, and we welcomed any effort. We tried every possible way for a peaceful solution. When there was an effort by the regional countries and neighbors, we welcomed it, we participated, and the National Resistance Front participated, myself personally participated. If there was even a slightest choice or a slightest chance for finding peace through peaceful negotiation and talks. Unfortunately, despite our big efforts and continuous effort that still I'm hopeful, unfortunately, it was Taliban that never they changed. Later, when many people they were hopeful, the gathering they had in Loy Jirga and their leader's speech, once again it showed that unfortunately they have not changed. They are even more radical and extreme than before. That's one thing, that yes, there has been some effort by the region, and we are really appreciating it. And there has been a great deal of sort of pressure by the international countries, international community on the Taliban for creating and shaping an inclusive government, finding the true path to legitimacy, and also fighting against international terrorism, which we also welcome that. However, we see that the Taliban failing, and they have failed in all aspects of it. They failed in fighting against international terrorism because they shared the same ideology. They failed in creating inclusivity because they don't believe in it. And they failed in getting the legitimacy because they do not believe in the rule of law. They do not believe in the rule of people. And they believe that they have been handpicked by the Allah, the God Almighty himself, and they are the one to rule. This is unfortunately the reality of today of Afghanistan. Because of this mentality, although many, the statement of the Taliban, it said that the Taliban did not know about the presence of Ayman al-Zawahiri. Well, let me assure you one thing, that I know and many researches that the Taliban conducted in many areas of Kabul, they even managed to find a needle in a stack. So it is impossible to even imagine that the Taliban were not aware of the Ayman al-Zawahiri in Kabul. Despite our many efforts to warn the world, just like my father, that he warned the world of the threat of Al-Qaeda and many other terrorist groups. We warned this way before when Ayman al-Zawahiri was being found in Kabul. In our intelligence also report and information, it was indicated that the Al-Qaeda leadership are freely working in Afghanistan. They're freely conducting themselves across Afghanistan. They're freely recruiting, and also their military and their camps are being created across Afghanistan. And we knew that it is happening. We knew that Osama bin Laden's sons are actually freely walking across Afghanistan and going across Afghanistan. It could not be provided to them if the Taliban were not cooperating with them. So it is clear indication that they have completely are aligned with such terrorism entities and organizations. However, on the other hand, there are other terrorist groups which to some extent are cooperating with Taliban, and also the Taliban are creating a situation for them. For example, the terrorist group of Ansarullah, the terrorist group of Uzbekistan, and many other terrorist groups who are finding Afghanistan a safe haven to recruit, to re-energize, to plan and strategize their future, to actually destabilize the region of Central Asia, such as Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, many other countries. So therefore, Afghanistan, as we are speaking, has a legitimate government, a regime which is supporting domestic and international terrorism. And Afghanistan right now is becoming a hub, a safe haven for the regional and international terrorism, unfortunately. If it is not being taken care of, or the Afghanistan situation is not being taken care of seriously by the world, it will be a catastrophic mistake. Let me once again to make this point. Ayman al-Zawahiri, yes, he was found and he was being eliminated in Kabul, but he was an old man that my personal information shows that he could not deliver more than just being a spiritual leader. But already the tactical leadership, the strategic leadership has been passed on to the new leaders, new faces within Al-Qaeda and within the international terrorism. So therefore, those people are very much alive, very much active, and working in Afghanistan.
Yes, and it's As you said, it's almost like deja vu again, going back 30 years where your father had warned the world that, you can't ignore Afghanistan and the groups that you leave behind. Back then, there was a whole international dimension of terrorism, and then the Taliban came. And of course, unfortunately, the rest is history. It led to a 20-year war in Afghanistan, as well as international terrorism never seen before. Once again, we see Afghanistan disappearing from the priority list, especially in the US government. Unfortunately, with the 1-year anniversary coming, although there is a lot of media spotlight now in America, the Americans have kind of washed their hands off it and seem to be making the same mistake of, okay, the war is over, we've left now, we will conduct airstrikes or drone strikes, but let the region deal with it. It could be a mistake because, as you said, this is just the beginning. There'll be more terrorist groups coming. How does one engage with the American messaging? It's very clear. The American efforts to negotiate with the Taliban have failed. International terrorism is still there. Women's rights is something that the Taliban have not promised. And at the same time, there is no pluralism. So the Taliban are ruling like an ethnic nationalist party, ignoring the majority of the people, even in terms of making Pashto the official language, rather than which majority of the Afghan people speak Dari. So how does America remain focused on points beyond just terrorism? And what is the message, or what is the engagement from the National Resistance Front with the Americans?
Well, with this, I need to actually speak far more than just the case of Afghanistan. I believe that the American dream that when you speak about it, or those values that America has been holding its flag for many years. What made America America, what made it this nation great, it was a certain values embedded in the soul of this nation and country by the founding fathers, and then the continuation of it. I truly believe that, unfortunately, the national interest to some extent, it took over those the broader values that America was always carrying and trying to speak. Of course, before it was America had this image of trying to do something good for many other countries, and it was being seen as the national interest of America as well. But however, recently what we see is that the situation, for example, in Afghanistan, when it was the time to actually see the benefits of all the effort and investment of America in Afghanistan, the Americans left without any consideration of what would happen in Afghanistan, and how damaging it would be to the image of America as a country and as a nation, which comes to the assistance of another country. Many try to argue with this that it has been 20 years America was in Afghanistan. Well, a country which has been in the war for 40 years, of course, it requires few generations to get back to track of normality. And the new generation, such as myself and many others, that we finished our studies in the West and we came back to Afghanistan, and we were trying and we were hoping to do something good for our country instead of just staying in the West, we lost that chance. And unfortunately, that short-sighted policies that didn't see a far distance in Afghanistan, how the situation in Afghanistan, helping Afghanistan development politically, socially, and economically, it will help also the image of America. For example, in Afghanistan, just forgetting about that, just for the sake of a short-term interest in America and winning votes, just to pull the troops, and also to forget about the circumstances and the consequences. I believe it was a true a big blow on the image of that sort of America. The current situation in Afghanistan, besides just the terrorism, I believe the situation in women could not be worse. I do not see, and I do not truly find any other country on this planet to be a worse country for women to be. I do not see any other country for the different sorts of ethnicities, groups, religion, sects, to live worse than Afghanistan. So currently, Afghanistan, after 20 years of disinvestment, is becoming such a radical, ethnicity-wise and religious-wise, and also because of the roots of terrorism, it became such a radical that unfortunately the image that Afghanistan is showing, that after 20 years of investment by America, this is the result of that sort of investment, this is the result of that presence. So therefore, if it is not being taken care of or to looked into seriously, I believe it will be very damaging for American image, for the great nation of America, indeed. Unfortunately, the situation of Afghanistan is very serious, and I believe, personally, that it truly needs the attention of not just America but the world, because Afghanistan, one more time, it was before that Afghanistan became a place that truly hurt the other countries. This time again, Afghanistan can become another place and another region that can once again become a hub for terrorism that can affect the other countries. If the debacle, if the catastrophe of the Afghanistan's government's fall in the 15th of August, if it would not happen, I don't believe that the situation in Ukraine would happen right now. So you see how things are connected in this world. So I believe that the situation in Afghanistan had some results in the situation in Ukraine and Europe.
Yes, now you make a very important point. By making America look weak, I think that's had multiple damaging impacts with regards to US policy in Russia, with Ukraine. And I think a lot of critics of the current administration would agree with you that the weakness that stems from America's position in the world, the way Kabul was left, has severely undermined the global security order. You've of course mentioned already being a threat to the region. The Taliban have there have been rockets fired into Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. The Taliban were even shooting with the Pakistani military and the Iranian military. In your discussions with the region, from Iran to Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, China, what do you think? Is there something the region can do more? Because at one point, whilst the Taliban government has not been recognized, most Asian countries have their ambassadors back in Kabul, or some of them never left. What can the region do in terms of not to legitimize the Taliban as the only option for Afghanistan?
Yeah. Well, I believe that if you are thinking of Afghanistan as a sort of a fire pit, of course, the area closer to the fire will be burned sooner than the farther areas. And the region is actually that sort of situation. We see these attacks, we see these sorts of efforts, despite the effort of the region to have a meaningful engagement with the Taliban, what we see it is happening. It can happen for two reasons, or under two circumstances. First is that the Taliban are incompetent in controlling the borders, in controlling the for providing security, and their incompetence in actually delivering the necessity safety for the safety of the border, security of border to the neighbors. But secondly, it is that the Taliban are showing the potential of being a proxy that can be used by the rivals to be used against these sorts of region countries. For example, the Pakistan, it can be a great indication that the legitimate or the sort of the powerful tool that can be used against the Pakistan is this problem against Iran or against the Central Asian countries. So therefore, I believe this is to some extent what the region sees it. They see it as a proxy tool that they're engaging so it won't be used against them. But this is not a proper diplomacy that a country can conduct and have with another country. So far, the country's engagement with the Taliban are solely based on this one factor, which is fear. And there is no respect, there is no sort of a strategic partnership and relationship, there is no understanding, there is no cultural or social relationship. It is just security based, and it is just based on the fear that this fire won't spread to the regions. But my prediction is that this cannot continue. Afghanistan requires a legitimate government, and Afghanistan requires a government which is accountable to the people and to the region, to the world, and can have a strategic relationship with them. A government which is supported by the people of Afghanistan. But right now we don't. So therefore, one of the important things that I have passed my message to many regional countries and also to the world, that we must work together, and the region must provide platform and solution to all sides, not just the Taliban, to find or to reach an agreement for establishing a legitimate government. So we truly need the world attention for the political development in Afghanistan, for political solution in Afghanistan, so we truly have an accountable government, a legitimate government. Right now, what is happening when it comes to the women's right, when it comes to security, when it comes to the border problems, when it comes to international terrorism, the Taliban are easily saying, we don't know, or we don't answer. So it doesn't matter what happens, their answer is always like that. So therefore, we cannot have a state, a legitimate state, which is pro-terrorism, which is a proxy against the others. And I do not want my country to be that country, to have that state. So therefore, a legitimate state, an accountable one, is something which will be the solution to all these concerns of the region and also the world.
Thank you. And I remember we spoke about this so many times, but even last year, even under President Ghani's leadership, you had argued about a decentralization form of government, where a country like Afghanistan, with just its geography and sheer range of mountains, valleys, and deserts, you can't control everything from the center. Just like even in the US, down in Texas or Florida or the deep south, they don't want Washington interfering, and there is always a federal v. state law. And now this problem has become bigger in Afghanistan. There is a group which is speaking only one language and trying to represent only one ethnicity of Afghanistan, trying to impose themselves. And as you had said, you started the resistance, and in Panjshir, it's now spread to neighboring provinces of Andrab, Takhar. What do you see as a vision going forward? Because the Taliban are talking to you, the regional countries are talking to you, but your stance hasn't changed. You're not here for power. Taliban offered you ministries. They offered you a very senior leadership role. I know even the former government, President Ghani, offered you. So clearly yourself personally, this is not for power. It's about a truly national cause, decentralized, but one Afghanistan, which does not infringe the rights of the other. Where is the way forward here? Because the Taliban so far are militarily, they've sent more troops to the north because they're fighting big resistance. They've even lost a few helicopters. How would you summarize the military resistance now and transition into the political dialogue?
Well, to answer this question, first of all, on a personal note, you have no idea how much I miss, being in the library like yours, and being able to freely read any roman, any books I want, and to read about science and what's happening, and which is my passion. I never wanted this position. I never want to hold a power, and my fighting and my struggle is not for power, it is for justice. Simple as that. Unfortunately, the current situation is not just. The current Taliban groups regime is not just, and all the rights of the groups in Afghanistan, the women, the people, the ethnicities, and everything, it has been undermined. So therefore, I had no choice, and the war was being brought to us, and we had to defend ourselves, and they left us with no choice. So the resistance is happening, and it is spreading. You saw that the resistance and of the people of Balkh, and you saw how the people in Balkh, the women of Herat, the women of Mazar, and they are resisting. And also, I'm sure you're hearing about the resisting of the people in Kandahar and Helmand, in these regions as well, that there are figures who are not happy, and there are communities, they are not happy about the rule of just like a certain group over the whole nation. So therefore, the situation, unfortunately, is like this. And we had no choice but to defend. But my priority, as always, has been for political solution. And our military struggle is till the Taliban realize that a military regime or a militant group's sort of rule over that country is not an option, and it is not sustainable. So they realize the fact that we all in Afghanistan need a political solution, and for us to start a political and a peaceful sort of negotiation and talks with all sides of Afghanistan to truly find the solution for Afghanistan. We are one of the group which believe and which have sort of a paper, which have a plan for the future of Afghanistan, and that is establishing a decentralized government. This is our opinion, that Afghanistan truly can find peace, security, stability, and justice through this system, because we have practiced and we have tried different type of centralized government and all failed. So I believe the sort of the destiny of the Taliban and their regime is no different, because their centralized system is destined to collapse and fail, because all others also fail. So our vision politically is to establish a decentralized government for all Afghanistan, so we all can truly participate in shaping the power in Afghanistan, all ethnicities, all groups, all sides, and to truly create a democratic, just system that truly is accountable and is serving to the people of Afghanistan. To reach to that, we are right now resisting, because the values and the belief of the Taliban are completely against what we want, against what our people want, and against what Afghanistan truly deserves. The Taliban want nothing but a total, sort of having a tyranny, to having a government which is oppressive, and which is completely against all the values of Islamic values and also the human value. And with this having being our vision, our military effort, it is to stand against them, to give hope to the people of Afghanistan that they should not leave Afghanistan. Afghanistan is still worth fighting for and living in, and that we should not leave our home in the hand of international terrorism. As we are speaking, just the way that we predicted and we knew, and also our information was showing that the leadership of Al-Qaeda, it was in Afghanistan, and it is in Afghanistan. Our information, it indicates that every single day more and more terrorism and terrorists or international terrorists are coming inside Afghanistan. As we are speaking, in Badakhshan, Takhar, Kunduz, Baghlan, Helmand, Paktia, Khost, Herat, Faryab, the terrorists are actually going and staying there. So Afghanistan is becoming this safe haven. And our effort is against ISIS, is against the oppression of the Taliban, and is against all those who want to make my country a hub for terrorism, a proxy against others, in a country that does not worth living in. We are fighting to say, no, Afghanistan is still can be saved, and we have hope, and we are fighting for a country. In this matter, that we are just because no country is helping. No country is basically financing us. No country is helping us logistically, and just some countries might ethically staying with us and supporting us ethically, because they know our value, or very much the same value that in the past 20 years the countries who were in Afghanistan, such as America, were preaching to the people of Afghanistan: democracy, human rights, women's rights, and all of this. So because of that, ethically, they cannot be against us because our value are identical. However, no country is supporting us. So basically, this is solely based on the generosity and on the commitment and determination of the people of Afghanistan. So because of that, we are fighting against international terrorism. Our success has been minimal and it has been very slow. However, it is spreading. From one Panjshir Valley, now we are in many provinces around it and many areas across Afghanistan, especially that every step the Taliban are proving our point, that they have not changed, that unfortunately they do not believe in the values that we speak of.
Yeah, no, it's a resistance that now has begun to come to attention globally. And as you said, you actually answered before I could ask the question about support. You're on your own. There is no regional or international support because there is unfortunately appeasement. We see countries in Europe, just to not upset the Taliban, have made announcements that, they do not support any kind of political opposition, which is very unfortunate. So you see a policy of appeasement towards the Taliban, which I think is a challenge for the National Resistance Front, because many governments' attention being away from Afghanistan into Ukraine or parts of China, but without realizing everything comes to Afghanistan. Russia's own security is linked to Central Asia and Afghanistan, the China border with Afghanistan as well. So the destabilization definitely can spread. In summary, again, I think the two major takeaways after a 1-year anniversary of the fall of Kabul are the Taliban have not changed. All those people, unfortunately, in the region, neighboring countries, as well as the West, who were saying this is a new Taliban, they're pluralistic, they respect women, they are not ethno-nationalists or ethno-fascists, they will allow everyone. This simply hasn't happened. It's been 1 year. How long can the world go on? And at the same time, going back perhaps 30, 35 years, your father was the first to negotiate with the Taliban. Many people sometimes forget that your father went unarmed to talk to them at Kabul. And he spoke about religion. All Afghans are Muslims. Of course, there are Sikhs and Hindus as well who live respectfully. But the Islam that the Taliban were talking about is not compatible with Afghan culture. And I think some people in the West make this mistake of saying, oh, the Taliban are not giving women's education because the Afghan women don't want education, which is a big, big myth. And I think this is a big, appropriation of culture when people say the Taliban are the local mullahs everyone wants. That's a big mistake. And I think your challenge, apart from being in the military fights alone, in terms of the political fight as well, is extremely important. And what happens in Afghanistan will not always remain in Afghanistan. We are, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the terrorist groups from Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, and even Kazakhstan. There was some violence in Kazakhstan in the 12 months, which was directly linked to Afghanistan. So, it would be good to get, some sort of summary conclusion from you, which of course you've been saying for many years. You've been very constant. And I know this personally as well, being with you for so many years. You could have been in power many years ago. You were a young student, but the former two Afghan presidents offered you very senior roles. You declined. Even now, this is not about power, which many people forget. It's about the people, the culture of Afghanistan. Afghanistan was a peaceful country before the Soviet invasion. It can be again if people don't impose and think that Taliban are culturally appropriate for Afghanistan. How would you, on this 1-year anniversary where Afghanistan is back in the media and takes Ukraine out of the media, what could the message be here from Washington, from the policy perspective, not to just look at Afghanistan from a terrorism perspective, but the people, culture. You can't kill a country's culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding this, well, to summarize it and to make it very simple, I can say that I need to identify myself to the audience. Who am I? My name is Ahmed Masoud. I'm a citizen of Afghanistan. I studied in the West, and I have moderate sort of beliefs. And I'm a moderate Muslim, and I strongly believe in my religion. And I believe that my religion is a religion of peace, it's a religion of love, it's a religion of art, and it's a religion of science, not extremism. And I believe that all human beings are equal, that we need to behave all equally. I believe in a democratic government, and I believe that the people should be the one who make the decision for their own future. I do not want any personal, a person, or I do not want any sort of a party to be in charge of a country or to rule a country. So I'm against tyranny, and I'm against a sort of that sort of extreme political beliefs. This is my identity, and this is the identity of millions of Afghans. And the Taliban are bringing war on this identity. So the war of Afghanistan is war of identity. And they do not want such figures, they do not want such identities to exist in Afghanistan. They want to remove that. They want a country, and they want to rule a society like a shepherd is basically controlling the sheep. They do not want a society which questions their behavior. Just the way that their leader in their speech at Loya Jirga said, no one is allowed to Emarat. This is their identity and belief. Their identity is extreme in Islamic way. Their identity is extreme when it comes to the ethnicities in Afghanistan, and their identity is extreme and ruling the country. So therefore, the Taliban in the past 1 year showed they have not changed, as you mentioned. They're very extreme. They're against women and different ethnicities, and they are against whoever is opposing them. Doesn't matter if he's Pashtun, Tajik, Uzbek, Hazara. They showed that they are a danger to the region and to the world. And also they showed they cannot govern, because we see that even from the humanitarian support Afghanistan is receiving, which we truly appreciate it, and we encourage to continuation of it. But the Taliban are stealing from that and sending it and giving it to actually not the people in need, but they're giving it to their own troops and the family of their own troops. So it just shows that Taliban cannot govern. They do not believe in inclusivity. They do not believe in values. They do not want the identity which is acceptable by the world. They do not want that to exist. So therefore, the position of the world, to summarize it, if they are okay with the situation in Ukraine, in Taiwan, and many other parts of the world, and they see that their resistance, if they see their fighting, if they see their struggle legitimate, they cannot be sort of this will be a hypocrisy to say that the sort of the effort of the people of Afghanistan and Afghanistan is not acceptable. This is something which will show the hypocrisy, and it will be seen as a hypocrisy. And especially us who fought for so many years together against the terrorism and global, the war on terror sort of campaign. And we worked on this together. At this stage, to be left alone and not to be sort of even our political effort and our sort of independent resistant effort not to be seen or not to be accounted or even to be denied or to say no, it is not acceptable. Well, it is hypocrisy, and we will continue, and we are working with our people for the values and for the livelihood that we truly deserve. We do not just deserve to be able to breathe or for our daughters to be able to go to school, but we deserve a society, we deserve a country to live as human beings. We want a country to live exactly how a Norwegian or a Finlandese or a Swedish or a British or American is living in their own country. We want that sort of life, life for ourselves in here as well. a decent and life, and a life of with morality, with spirituality, and also with justice.
No, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us again. And, as I said, just 1 year ago, we were in the mountains and valleys of Panjshir. It was beautiful, and unfortunate and sad to see Afghanistan descend into this brutal occupation, which, again,
Absolutely.
whether it's in the center or the north or the south, we could see if no one wanted this kind of governance. There has been no governance, whether it's the Chancellor of Kabul University, whether it's the health ministry. There are no qualified people in the Taliban government to run. And, we will look forward to carrying on this dialogue with yourself and the National Resistance Front, and that Afghanistan remains important. So thank you for taking time to talk to Atlantic Council, and we'll look forward to having you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, and I hope that in the next meeting, in the next talking, we shall speak about a better situation with more optimism.